My name is Michelle Fehler. I'm part of the faculty at the Design School, and my background is in visual communication and biomimicry.
I'm Darren Petrucci. I'm a professor of architecture in the Design School. Michelle and I and Heidi Fisher taught a studio this semester, a global engagement studio that was focused on the notion of mindfulness.
We decided to explore mindfulness as a topic for our studio because it is such a prevalent issue at this moment that in society we're bombarded by social media and by noises and by multitasking, that our minds are very busy, and mindfulness is a method to help us calm down and create space to be aware and present in our moments.
We began the studio by traveling to Switzerland. We had 24 students, and we went to Switzerland because some of the most mindful design has come out of Switzerland, from product design to visual communication design and architecture. We spent a lot of time deeply looking at spaces and media in trying to understand how these very elegant, very, in some cases, seemingly simple things had very deep meanings and very deep ways of touching us as human beings. So we visited thermal baths, and we visited chapels, and we had bookbinding exercises. We took a hike through the Alps. We explored nature and the built environment through this filter of mindful practice. And when we came back to Arizona and to ASU, we decided to run the studio in as mindful way as we could possibly do it. So we began the studio by looking at the entire ASU campus, which was a daunting task. But as the students began to realize that we had a microcosm of the whole campus in the design school itself. And so we really began then to focus on trying to use the design school and the culture that all the students know well as a prototype for thinking about how we could develop mindful practices that could transcend the design school and move into the larger university. When we were in Switzerland, we began some practices and a process of looking at what we called the truths of a space, trying to understand really what were the essential elements of the space and why were they designed the way they were. And we, from those, developed a set of suppositions, and we used that same process when we came back and looking at the design school.
One of the nice surprises that we've come across in this process was that we found spaces within the design school that had latency for mindful moments, and then we found spaces that were absent of those latencies. And the students decided to leverage some of those latencies in order to adjust them or tweak them to provide those mindful moments and those gaps for the students on a daily basis.
Students worked in teams, multidisciplinary teams, to look at what we defined in terms of mindfulness as the gap between stimulus and response. And so they found gaps in the building, both physically and consciously, and they began to develop design ideas that could have the experience of the person moving through these spaces feel more aware and present as they move from one stimulus into another kind of response situation. So moving from the outside of the building, from their homes, let's say, to their design studios, that space between became a moment for them to have a greater sense of awareness.
One of the discoveries that we came across during the studio was that we were able to span multiple design disciplines without focusing on one discipline. It was really helpful to have students from all the various design areas, such as visual communication, interior design, industrial design, and architecture. However, our projects were going beyond one specific design discipline. So the students actually were able to experience a truly collaborative design process instead of focusing on just their own design discipline. One of the meaningful activities that we infused into the studio was the practice of mindfulness itself. And so every studio, we started off with a mindfulness exercise that the students could experience. The students were also asked to express their experience in terms of mindful practice in visual ways or in their design process, so that the mindful practice from the studio would influence how they went about to solve the problem of mindfulness at ASU.
The studio was really about focusing very deeply on very small spaces but with very large implications that hopefully not only changed the minds and the lives of our own students, but became demonstrations that are transferable to other parts of the university.